order the meeting of the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Vallecitos Water District, and would you please lead us in the pledge?
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Director Elford, Director Hernandez,
Here.
Director Martin,
Here.
Director Snell,
Here.
Director Evans.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt the agenda for the regular meeting?
Move to approve.
Moved
Second.
and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, next is oral communications, and at this point I have one speaker, and that would be Mike Hunsaker. He's here. Oh, I was going to say, where'd he go? It's so interesting to look out and see so many men in suits. It's an impressive meeting. Michael, it's your turn.
Consent calendar that was already approved.
No, we do oral communications before the
Oh,
consent.
We got two seconds. I want to continue the question of eminent domain. I mentioned the case of Hedge-Heshy. I also found out that some abuse of eminent domain was taking place even back then. There was a Spring Valley Water Company supplying all the water to San Francisco. And after the fire and after a great deal of problems, then the question of where to get water, and Hedge-Hesky became a target of eminent domain. But it turns out the Spring Valley Water Company was also using eminent domain back then in order to expand their water company and their monopoly. And one of the problems was corruption and a great deal of eminent domain taking of properties at far below true value to expand, again, the monopoly. I noticed in Lake San Marcos the question of pollution. There's been a question of whether or not Lake San Marcos would be a potential reservoir for VWD. It would be, in some respects, an ideal reservoir for non-potable water for a relatively quick period of time. Of course, there's only a few people who can use non-potable water at the present time. We're going to be investing considerable amount of money to clean up the lake one way or the other. The last thing we should do is to spend $50 to $100 million cleaning up the lake to improve the value of the lake and then to lease it from CDC. If there is any intention, future or present, to use Lake San Marcos as a reservoir, it should be stated now, plainly, clearly. And the most appropriate public use would be to take it by eminent domain. Because if we spend that money to improve the property at ratepayers' expense and taxpayers' expense, they should be the ones who reap the benefit. I'm not opposed to a fair market value given to the property. And I'm not opposed to the lake being used as a reservoir. As you know, I'm for reservoirs. I am against setting up a new monopoly. I am against making improvements for the benefit of private investors rather than the community. The silence on the question of where the reservoirs would come and what would happen to the water in the lake should it become at least to the non-potable but usable level, what's to be done. I think these are issues that need to be brought before the public and fairly discussed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. All matters listed under the consent calendar will be voted upon by one vote unless there's a separate discussion needed on an item, and then we'll move it to action. So is there a motion for approval of the consent calendar?
Move to approve.
And the second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent calendar. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, say no. Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Good job. All right. Action items. Item 2.1, bond refunding documents and resolution. This will be presented by Tom.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah, partially. It's a team effort, Madam Chair, members of the board. On page 32 of your board package, you have a memo that addresses this bond refunding that we have pending. Back in March, the board approved staff to go ahead and put the team together to make this refunding happen. This is $54 million of certificates of participation that were originally issued in 2005. And with us in the audience, we have some of our team. Jim Copeland is from Sidley Austin. He's our bond counsel. And then Tom DeMars, you met already. He's with Fieldman Roll-Up, our financial advisor. And later, Cameron will be coming up to this item. Cameron Parks from Citigroup is our investment banker / underwriter for this issuance too. So he'll be giving us a market update on this. So you have before you to consider a resolution that's required to be adopted in order for us to move forward with this refinancing. Also earlier, you were sent a list of, electronically, a list of other documents that would need to be executed. So the resolution is to be adopted and contracts and agreements authorized by the Board of Directors so that staff can execute these agreements and such. And that we're planning for July 9th or sooner for a closing on it, so that would happen then. Some of the documents you may have noticed that you received might have blanks or estimates in them, which is typical because we can't fill those in until we actually price the bonds, which would be next week. The legal counsel has reviewed all the documents, and on May 12th, our financial advisor and staff had presented to the rating agencies, both Fitch, one meeting with Fitch and then one with Standard & Poor's. Fitch agency reaffirmed our AA+, and S&P upgraded our rating from AA to AA+ with a stable outlook, which, considering the uncertainty right now and that other agencies are facing downward pressure on their grading, that we're very, very pleased to come out of that with the AA+. Before I bring up Cameron, the recommendation is going to be for the board to consider adopting this resolution and also authorizing staff to execute the necessary contracts and agreements and documents for the refunding. The fiscal impact, we won't know exactly what the fiscal impact is until we price these things, price these bonds. Or maybe the closing, I don't know which is more appropriate to say, where we actually know those numbers. But the reason we're undertaking this is for interest savings. We can issue refunding bonds at a lower interest rate than the bonds currently have. So since the beginning, we've looked at the different bonds, and this latest presentation, and I think Cameron will allude to it, that we would only be refunding the bonds with the most savings. So it's probably about $4 or $5 million in bonds that we hang on to, and they would mature in 2018, and then we'd refund the most efficient bonds to maximize our savings. So that's the way the refunding is right now. So what I would like to do is ask Cameron to come on up, and he's got a presentation with the latest numbers for us.
Hi, and thank you, Tom. And again, I'm Cameron Parks with Citigroup, and we're honored to have the opportunity to serve as your underwriter on this transaction and be part of the team. We've been working with Tom and others, I think, for about 2 months, month and a half now. And we're excited to reach this point and look at potentially pricing next week. But before we get into that, let me go briefly through a couple pages, and I understand you probably maybe just looking at them on your screens. Let me make sure I get to know how this works.
Diane.
Do I do page down?
No.
I didn't. I'll just skip right into page number 3. So a little bit of background about the transaction. I think Tom gave you some sense, but as you may recall, in 2005, the district issued some COPs to fund the Twin Oaks reservoirs, the two reservoirs, first and second, as well as some funds toward the Metal Arc plant. Then in 2007, those bonds were converted from a variable rate, which they were initially issued at, into a fixed rate, and so those fixed rates apply today. The bonds were sold with a 10-year par call, the ability to call the bonds back at par, which is the original price, and that's typical in the market. So that call provision allows you to call the bonds in July of 2017. So as we've watched the market, certainly ourselves and others in the industry, we've identified, certainly with the folks at Fieldman roll-up and so forth, that there are opportunities to potentially refund the bonds. So as a part of the process now, getting prepared to go out into the market, staff did go in front of the two rating agencies, Standard & Poor's and Fitch, and as Tom described, there was an upgrade by S&P, which is really remarkable given that the agencies are trying to sift through the drought right now, which is the biggest issue on their minds. And so for them to have the confidence in your management and staff to go ahead and give that upgrade and put you at the AA+ level is really remarkable. There are very few entities in the state who have a AAA rating, and most often those are among the largest entities, East Bay Mud, Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. So to be at the AA level and for them to make that change now, they certainly could just wait, is really a commendation of the work that you all have done. Tom mentioned there are a lot of numbers on the page here, but on the right side, the bonds outstanding have carry an interest cost rate of 4.67%, and I'll show you what the interest rate would be in this market now. But that's the sort of bogey that we're trying to get savings or reduction in interest rate against. And currently there are about 53.7 million bonds outstanding. So just turning then to page 4. Actually, I think that this is okay, but I think this may be the Fieldman presentation, believe it or not, which is okay. I think this is the presentation for the last meeting. But it's okay if we want to run with it, that's fine.
Do we have hard copies?
Nope. This is for the auditing.
It's certainly okay, yeah.
Okay, if you can wing it.
I'm sorry.
No, that's
I thought I
fine.
had the next one on there.
No, that's fine. And I think Robert Poor may have given some of these pages to you the other day, but I think what this page was meant to illustrate was that interest rates have declined, but have been recently volatile, which is certainly part of the theme in terms of trying to be prepared to go out to the market. I think that we have seen an uptick in rates this week, although last week was an improvement in rates, so it's sort of one of those, a tale of each week and how the market's reacting to the news that's coming out. So we're going to, I think the plan at this point would be to prepare documents to go out and market as of tomorrow, and then starting next week, we'd be able to get out of the market, or if conditions warrant, potentially wait. Turning to page 5, and these numbers are a little bit older, but I can tell you where we are today. Sorry? No problem. So what this page, if you have it on the screen, it shows that the refinancing would be a refunding of $48 million, and those are the bonds that are callable, the bonds that mature after 2017. So as Tom described, there'd be about $5 million that would stay outstanding. In the current market, you could actually refinance at a rate of 3.25. So versus that 4.67%, you'd be saving about 1.4% in interest rate, and that's really where our debt service savings is driven by. The average annual savings, I know the page actually here, the numbers actually are remarkably similar. It's about $232,000 as of when we just looked at it this week. The presentation on the screen had $230,000 at that time. So we've had some stability in the market, at least in terms of the net cash flows to you all. And savings are in and around that 7% number. It was 6.8, 6.9% as of this presentation, whereas when we ran it this week, it was about 7.5%. So a little bit of an improvement there. So I think on a gross cash flow basis, it's about 4.8 million total. So over the life of the transaction, you'd be saving $4.8 million, which is that $230,000, over the full term of 20 years. And on a present value basis, which we in the financial community often.
I think Patrick was in here a minute ago.
Hand puppets, that's okay, we get it.
Wes,
Can
Well, if you want,
You can continue, I
Sure.
think we'll be all right.
Yeah.
on a present value basis, which is a number that we often use in the financial community, it's about $3.7 million in today's terms. So that's 4.8 million of savings on a present value basis, worth about $3.7 million. Again, and that's 7.5%. I did want to mention, the transaction is sensitive to the market. This isn't a situation that we have we basically are going out to the investor community and finding an interest rate that they're willing to accept. And so we ran a sensitivity analysis just to give you a sense of how things would play out. And in terms of that, again, it was, if you even just look at where we were a couple weeks ago, it was 6.9% savings, we're up to 7.5%. We calculated that if interest rates were to decline by 27 basis points, that 7.5% would go all the way up to 10%. Conversely, if interest rates rise by 29 basis points, and one basis point is 100%, we'd be down to 5%. So you're basically halfway between a 10% result and a 5% result. And of course, it's not likely that rates will move by that many basis points by next week should we get onto the market, but we just wanted to kind of give you bookends of where the results may come out, and certainly we're hoping for an improvement in rates, but I think at 7.5%, we certainly think that's a good result. So anyway, I think that was, in terms of jiving the presentation we have and what's on the screen, I think that kind of brings us to the conclusion of what we prepared.
All right, Director Hernandez.
Well, once we go out to market, how long does the transaction take? I mean, are these bonds then swooped up by some big insurance company and they're done? Or is it,
Sure. That's
dwindle around?
good question. I think what we're planning to do is likely have a call on Friday with staff to talk about the market and talk about our approach. Then what we would do likely is Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, start talking preliminarily about what the interest rates we think might be achievable. But your question is a fair one. For a transaction of this size, about 45 million, we likely would hold a 1.5-hour order period. So we'll go out and the market operates on Eastern time because many of the investors are in the East Coast. So even folks out here like PIMCO, which is a large buyer in Newport Beach, they all get in at 7:30 Eastern time, 4:30 in the morning. So we'll likely run that order period somewhere around starting at 7 a.m. So we may have an early call on either Wednesday morning or Thursday just to make sure everyone's okay with proceeding. And then we would hold the order period, and then at the end of the order period, we will come back with results and offer to underwrite at a given level. So your question is fair. We think around an hour and a half is likely the time period for us to get sufficient information back where either we understand where investors are or we're willing to then backstop the bonds by coming in and putting our capital to work. But that's kind of the time frame. So hopefully that addresses your question.
Director Martin.
Yes.
Thank you very much for doing this for us. I have a couple of questions, and I'm just very interested. This is a $57 million bond refinance deal, correct? Now, in between us and the eventual people that buy the bonds, how many layers, no offense, I mean this very nicely because I wear one, although I don't have a tie, how many layers of different suits or different companies do we have that do different various steps along the way?
Sure. In terms of, I don't want to certainly generate, in terms of bringing the transaction to market, you have your lawyers, financial advisors, and underwriters. And that's the bond issuance team. I'm not sure whether, that's one aspect of preparing the transaction. And then there's a trustee as well, who's the entity that handles the payment of bonds to bondholders. In terms of the actual investment of proceeds, we would be the underwriters, so we would conduct the order period and then deliver funds at closing. And at times it's an individual buyer, we call it mom and pop, but so it's just somebody on their own, or often people will work with an entity to represent them, do credit work and so forth. That would be a big mutual fund, a Franklin Fund or a PIMCO, Vanguard. So it's typically either an individual investor or an investor who gives their money to some entity to manage their money for them.
And I think our savings is great, and I think that's fantastic. I think it's a good thing for us to do. But again, just out of curiosity, on a $57 million bond deal, what's the actual, roughly, no trade secrets, what's the actual profit motivation through all the intermediaries? Between us getting the $57 million and X, what is that variance? Out of curiosity.
Yeah, I think that the presentation showed, I think the issuance costs are estimated here at between $130,000 and $150,000. So the present value savings of the district is somewhere in the neighborhood of 3.7 million, and the transaction costs are somewhere in the neighborhood of 130.
We don't incur any other costs in between, they sell it
Right,
at
we
value.
don't.
Yeah, but even when they sell it, okay, the question is, I think, is somebody that's gonna buy these bonds, do they then remarket and resell it and get a profit on it? Or is it just sold directly?
Typically, at the end of the order period, we will allot bonds to a given investor, and most often, those are buy and hold investors. In a more volatile market, there may be flippers, is what we call it, which is that somebody wants to come in and then they're thinking that there's an opportunity. In this market, you don't see a lot of flippers because with interest rates going up, it's often hard to try to make money. They're going at risk, so we wouldn't anticipate, and we're not seeing very active participation by flippers in this market.
And all the costs are listed in the POS as sources and uses, so it's kind of all out there in the bond documents where you can see all the fees.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Cameron, there's a new slide up. Is there anything you want to say about that?
Oh, yeah, well, thanks. No, this is the right one. This is the right one. No, thank you.
We tried to download it and I don't know what happened there, but.
It was okay. No problem. I just wanted to make sure.
Thank you.
This was just the page that I tried to reference in terms of the sensitivity analysis. So this was to try to help give some perspective that this is a fluid market, and until we get out and actually sell the bonds, the actual economics are subject to change. There are quite a few numbers. To me, I thought the interesting ones were the bottom row numbers that show the rate movement that generate the given savings. So we're currently at about 7.59% savings, and you can see that should interest rates move up or down, the savings will either improve or deteriorate a little bit. But that was just to try to provide a little bit of context. And on the right side of the page, as you all know, if you have any exposure to CNBC or anything, there's always news every morning, and the market is reacting to that. And so we try to outline some of the major things that are occurring this month. This week, notably, is the jobs report. The Department of Labor releases the job statistic, the unemployment level, the first Friday of each month. And the market is obviously paying a lot of attention to that because that's seen as one of the key bellwethers in terms of where the economic recovery stands. So between now and pricing next week, that's probably one of the larger, more notable developments. But we just wanted to provide a little bit of a sense. The Federal Open Market Committee, and I can stop as soon as you want, but the Federal Open Market Committee is meeting later this month, and that's the entity that determines the Fed funds rate, and many of the market participants are keenly watching what the Fed does, but people don't anticipate that they're going to raise the rates this month.
Okay, is there any further questions or comments?
I just wanted to thank staff. This looks like it's going to be a good opportunity to save our customers roughly $3 million. And to our partners who helped us do this, thank you so much. And I think we can put that first year's of savings towards maybe some new IT equipment.
Well, I think we kind of had that talk last week.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and with that, we do need a resolution, so we do need a roll call vote.
Thank you to the staff, as he said, very well
Thank you,
said.
that's late plans.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, we need a motion to
Move to
adopt.
approve.
Got a
Move to
motion?
adopt.
Second? Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution, and we have a number?
Yes, this will be resolution
1470,
1470.
and it will be roll call vote.
Yes, and Director Olatorp is noted absent. Director Hernandez?
Yes?
Director Martin?
Yes.
Director Canales?
Yes.
Director Evans?
Yes? Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys,
you.
appreciate it, thanks for coming down.
And I want to say before we go on to the next item, I think that we kind of, at our last meeting, didn't exactly articulate how wonderful our staff and finance have done in managing to get the A+, AA+. I think we kind of didn't make it clear. You've done an amazing job, and this is very impressive. And I'm not really great with the numbers. I'm real good for a moment, I lose it, but when I read the reports, I was very impressed. And from the San Diego Water Authority, not too many can do this, so thank you all. And make it 3.7 million, because I would like 700,000 so I could just stick with paper. All right, next item is 2.2, the Certified Public Accounting Firm Audit Entrance Meeting. It starts on page 39 in our packet, and it will be presented by John.
Madam Chair, members of the board. What you have before you on page 39, as you said, is The CPA firm, Certified Public Accounting Firm, is the entrance meeting. Is here we have Scott Mono, who's a partner at the new firm that was selected on March 18th to be our auditors. He'll be here to facilitate and walk you through, and he also has a presentation that I will put up on the screen for you. And
What do you think?
Plan this, Dennis?
Pardon?
Did you plan this?
I couldn't have planned this.
No, they go to the bathrooms.
Would you like to take a break, guys?
I could actually use one real quick. What's up?
Okay, actually, we're going to take a 5-minute recess.
Okay.
Come on.
Madam Chair, Board, thank you for having me here. Like John said, we're a partner of Rogers, Anderson, Malady, and Scott. It's the accounting firm that was selected in the RFQ process to audit the financial statements of the district. One of the requirements that we have is a communication with those charged with governance. It can either be like this or it can be in a letter. I do believe you have a letter from us. But that, I'm probably going to cover most of what's in that letter in these slides anyway, so we really don't need to get into the letter. But it is required by us to communicate with you guys. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of give you a basic idea of what the audit is, what we're going to do throughout the whole process. The audit objective in slide 1, audit objective is to express an opinion on management's financial statements. And that's a key phrase there, management's financial statements. You'll get a set of financial statements, yay thick, from management, and in that financial statement is going to be a report from us, probably about 2 or 3 pages long. And that's the only thing that is ours. Everything else is management's. It's a little different here for you guys because your staff prepares the financial statements themselves. So that makes it a little bit easier to comprehend from your standpoint. But a lot of our clients, we prepare the financial statements for, so we really have to stress to them that they're not mine. They are management's financial statements. And what we're doing is that we're expressing an opinion on those financial statements. After gathering and evaluating sufficient and appropriate audit evidence, we provide reasonable assurance on the financial statements, not absolute. I would be more than happy to attempt to provide absolute assurance on these statements, but it would cost you an arm and a leg because that would basically mean that we would be down here looking at just about every transaction that runs through the district's financial system. Reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatement. Material misstatement from errors, fraudulent financial reporting, misappropriation of assets, or violations of laws or other governmental regulations. Our opinion as to whether the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects with generally accepted accounting principles. And those are the basis of how the financial statements are prepared. If you have any questions, just fire away now. That way we don't have to go back in the slides or anything like that. And what we do, we follow particular auditing standards that we have to follow. Generally accepted auditing standards, the minimum audit requirements, reporting guidelines for California special districts, and generally accepted government auditing standards. And typically those are triggered by a single audit when you receive federal awards, and you'll be under that particular, those particular auditing standards, or it can be requested. And I'm not sure, you guys under good gas? No, okay. So you guys aren't under good gas. Responsibilities. Management. Prepare the financial statements. Supply complete, accurate financial records, and have a comprehensive internal control framework, including controls to prevent and detect fraud. The governing bodies. You guys have a fiduciary responsibility over the district, and you have a responsibility to ensure that management fulfills its obligations with the internal controls and the financial reporting. The auditor, accumulate sufficient appropriate audit evidence to support an opinion on the fair presentation of the financial statements. And typically, an audit is divided into 2 or 3 phases. The interim phase is the first phase. What we'll do is gather information, documents, grant agreements, look through those, and then come in and gain an understanding of significant transaction processes, which will be cash disbursements, cash receipts, your billing cycle, your billing, the billing process, the payroll process. Those are typically the main transaction cycles that you'll look at. We'll gather documentation as needed, perform walkthroughs over those transaction cycles, and test controls over significant transaction cycles as deemed necessary. And once we're done with that, we'll evaluate any findings. If we do have a finding, we'll go to finance first, see if maybe we erred, maybe we didn't. And if we did not err, then it'll be formalized into a formal finding. If not, then it'll be noted in our work paper that the error was noted, it was corrected. And then we have the year-end phase. This is the substantive testing. This is the part, when you think of an audit, this is what you think of. After all of the control testing and all that other stuff, we go in there and we say, okay, where's the risk in the entity? Where's a misstatement likely to happen? And that's typically where we'll focus the audit on. And then we design audit procedures to help minimize that risk. And we'll design customized audit programs to help minimize that risk as well. And then we'll perform substantive procedures. And like I said, that's when you think of an audit. They're going to come, not that you guys have this much, but they're going to come up to us and say, we have $100 million in Bank of America. And we're going to say, prove it. By looking at relevant documentation, bank statements, bank reconciliations, confirmation from the bank, outside parties. And then after that, we'll evaluate, communicate any audit conclusions and any findings. And then in the final phase, it's the reporting phase. We'll evaluate, since management prepares those for us, they will send us a draft. We'll go through, we'll make sure that the numbers they say are in the financial statements are the numbers that we have actually audited. We'll evaluate the statements to determine whether they're fairly presented and free of material misstatement in accordance with GAAP. And then we'll form an opinion. Now, I know in the past it's been called unqualified. There was some new terminology now. It's unmodified is the highest level of assurance that you can provide. I know typically when you say something, everybody's like, oh, that's bad. No, that was the highest. Unqualified was what you wanted. So it's changed to unqualified, and then you have modified, qualified, adverse, disclaimer. Adverse, you don't want that. That's bad. But the highest level of assurance we can provide is an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. And with that, that's the end of the slides. And if there are any questions, I will try to answer them. If not, I will
Questions
get
for
back
the
to you.
gentleman? Director Sinella.
Thanks for the presentation. Will we be receiving a schedule as to kind of the next steps as we work through this? And if I remember from our Finance Committee meetings that we had with you, that there was going to be an opportunity at some point for the Finance Committee or perhaps even the whole board to meet with you
Yeah, that's
individually?
Yeah, I mean, we can figure out what the timing is
Okay.
of the audit process. I believe actually we're supposed to be here next Monday.
Okay.
And then we can figure out the timing, and then anytime you guys want to meet with me, it's fine.
Okay. Now, is there from a-
We did allow in the proposal when they did it to have two meetings on an interim basis for the board.
So, and then just refresh my memories, I don't recall, was the Finance Committee going to meet with them, or was it going to be the entire board? Because if it's the entire board, don't we have to be kind of more in the formal?
No, what the board's direction was, and I could go back and I'll get that memo and send it back out to you again, that gave it the preliminary schedule, was the board's direction was to do the entrance meeting, which you're having right now with the full board, but then they deferred to up to 2 interim meetings with the Finance Committee to be scheduled at some point during the process. And then the final would come back to the Finance Committee, and then it would be brought forward to the full board at the recommendation of the Finance
That's what I
Committee.
thought, but I
Yeah,
couldn't remember.
I'll get you guys a copy of that again, but you are correct in what you remember.
Thank you.
Okay, and typically, a lot of the internal control kind of stuff, if we have any findings, would be next week. So maybe we can schedule something for after next week, a couple weeks after.
Yeah,
the
if we
next
have,
week.
if we have 2 opportunities to meet with you as, from the Finance Committee standpoint, it would be nice to maybe meet with you earlier on in the process, so if there's anything that the Finance Committee wants you to maybe take a tighter look at, we can have that conversation, and then we can meet with you for the second time, more towards the end of the process, so if we have any questions based off of your findings, then we can discuss that then.
No, that's perfect. That's fine.
Okay, and Director Martin?
Have you uncovered or had to write adverse?
No,
Never?
I never. That, if you're, I've seen it, I mean, I've seen it. Matter of fact, I just saw it. RFP came out and request for proposal for auditing services, and I saw that the opinion was very unorthodox from what I had ever seen before. Yeah, I have never written one, but I have seen one, and I didn't even bother. I looked at that RFP and said, nope, because there's some,
You don't want to deal with it?
no.
Was it a city up north?
No, it was,
Just
I
joking,
don't,
just
I can't remember, I think it was a
joking.
special district somewhere.
Yeah. Thank you.
How about you?
Well, thank you. It sounds very thorough, and you sound enthused. I do want to ask you now, would you be willing to make an adverse statement if we deserved it? Which we won't, but,
My professional standards require me to render the opinion that, basically an adverse opinion is saying your financial statements are not in accordance with GAAP. And there would be no way, especially with
I'm
bonds.
being a bit facetious,
I know.
but you did say it. I just want to make sure you'd be willing if you
Especially
found
with
something.
bonds going out.
And my second question, and it's really not, I'm going to direct it to General Manager. If the Finance Committee is set up with our two members, if one of them is unable for some reason, since they're both full-time work, would it be possible for me to fill in?
The chair is ex officio, if I remember by policy,
Okay.
that you would stand in their absence.
Okay, just want to be sure we were covered. All right, looking forward to it. Is that it? All right, so
Thank you very
really-
much.
Thank you.
And I'll
That's
get
it,
the board out the
information
memo
only.
that you guys approved on the process, so you know kind of what the dates were. Thank
Okay.
you.
Item 2.3, adoption of resolution of the Board of Directors approving the Encino Wastewater Authority's fiscal year operating plan.
Okay, and we-
capital improvements.
We do have the general manager, Kevin Hardy, here from Encina, along with Mike Steinlich, the assistant general manager from Encina. So Kevin will walk you through the presentation, the PFC and the CIC and the Jack and the every other acronym that Encina has reviewed this, and I'm sure Kevin will go over this again for a presentation. Just again, part of the background for the board, because it would be the second time for some of you and the first time, I think, for you, Mike. I can't remember. It was the second one to you as well. Encina goes through it, all the member agencies review it. We then send a resolution back, and then once Encina has all the resolutions from the member agencies, then they take their action. Probably stole your thunder, but take it away, Kevin.
No, that's the
Can I make a
the
motion?
process. Yeah, the process part of our budget is probably the most challenging because it's so different than pretty much any other public entity other than a JPA that's got members that pay the bills, and that's what Encina is. So let's just walk through the numbers very quickly, and I apologize if I can't read them from here, and I was gonna hope that I can see it, but what I can tell you is that our operating budget is here before you. The overall number is up about 2.9%, including a significant increase in revenue that's gonna happen because both
That's on
sales.
page 41 of your board packet.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, page 41. That will happen as a result of increased biosolids sales and also the receipt of alternative fuel at the Encino Water Pollution Control Facility. We'll talk about that a little bit in a second. So overall, the budget's up about 2.9%. For Vallecitos' share, it remains virtually unchanged. Vallecitos is kind of now with the metal arc treatment plant online consistently over the last 3 years. The way our cost allocation formula plays out is that Vallecitos' costs now can be expected to be relatively constant to the extent they remain in proportion to the other member agencies' flows. And they have been very consistent to Encina for a number of years. On the capital budget side, got a significant increase this year, up to about $15.5 million for investments across the infrastructure, and we'll talk a little bit about those in just a moment. The summary of the operating changes, there's really three things that are driving this. First, our personnel expenses, which are estimated to go up about $320,000. That's probably a little bit of an overstatement, given our board has had us go back to the drawing board on some staffing proposals that we've made. But we do have the informal input processes going on now, and we'll have some outcomes from that that have been estimated, included in your budget. The big pass-through expense is from SDG&E. We're expecting about a $227,000 pass-through on rates, and this is an area where all public entities are struggling with right now. And in fact, the utilities are struggling with it. They're having the same problems that we had, and we're expecting our customers to use less of it, but yet it costs more. In our particular case, we've estimated these pass-through expenses on the basis of some models over the last few years, but we still don't have good data on what actually will be passed through. We'll have to wait and see how those tariffs that apply to us actually hit our bills in the next fiscal year. But what we do know is that first thing, to the extent that we do not incur any of these increased operating expenses, they're just budgeted, we won't bill. Encina only bills those expenses which we actually incur. And the second thing is that with respect to especially these kinds of pass-through expenses, we work really hard to minimize those because we understand those are just go straight to the expense summary of a member agency. Looking at our operating revenue real quick, this just kind of gives you a sense of where we're at. You see the big hitter in this year are around two kind of new things. We're going to continue to sell pure green fertilizer. We'll make a little bit more money off that this year. Of course, we're not making money because it costs a whole lot of money to make that product. But what it does do is it reduces our overall biosolids management expenses, which is always a positive. We have also added a new laboratory service contract. You see that part of the puzzle is picking up a little bit. The Olevenham Municipal Water District is now a customer of ours, and we're doing water, wastewater, and stormwater testing for them. And the new piece of our revenue pie that we're really very excited about is our alternative fuel program. That provides not only an option for us to produce more power on site and perhaps achieve energy independence with that power. The other thing it allows us to do is to generate some revenue from the hauler who's bringing that revenue to us. It's a true public-private partnership. To build the facility, they contributed $300,000 in capital, and they're paying 4.5 cents per gallon to move the material to Encina. So not only do we get the value of the power, but we also get a 4.5 cent tipping fee. These numbers are based on a very conservative operation scenario. If we're able to fully operate the system, I think our revenue will be significantly higher. Take a look at our business values, just kind of go through some of the things we expect to accomplish next year. First thing, Encina exists to protect the Pacific Ocean, and we're going to treat and dispose of over 8 billion gallons of wastewater next year. That wastewater has about 20 million pounds of solids into it, and that's where our fertilizer comes from. And on the CIP side, related to protecting the Pacific Ocean, a big investment this year is going to start on our liquid treatment infrastructure. The capital budget has about $6.4 million in it to begin the improvements of our Phase 3 liquid treatment infrastructure. This infrastructure was brought into service in 1983, has been in service since then. We haven't put a lot of money into those facilities other than to operate them, and they were not upgraded in Phase 5. These are facilities that had useful life remaining in them when Phase 5 was planned and executed about 10.5 years ago. On the preserved public health side, we do have to renew our National Pollution Discharge Elimination permit to the Pacific Ocean. That is typically not a challenging issue, and we don't expect it to be a challenging issue this time, but I'll say to you that when Mr. Steinlich is back here with this same presentation in 5 years, we can expect that we'll see maybe some fairly significant changes in our NPDES permit. For now, we feel good. And I'll tell you on the capital side too, with respect to the outfall, that we've just completed a renewal of our lease with the State Lands Commission, so we've got a lease for the outfall to be in the ocean now. And we have a commitment to both survey and identify the location of that pipe on planet Earth, but we also have to go in and inspect the outfall both externally and internally. In fact, that internal inspection is going to happen in the next month or so. Somebody's going to actually go into the land portion of that outfall, which is, they don't pay that person enough. In terms of developing Encina's water resources, when we did our business planning last year, this is an area that really changed for Encina. The drought has kind of brought this on. And on the operations side, one of the things that we want to make sure that we come back with is we want to make sure that we come back with a pro forma report on how the alternative fuel system is doing, because this has the chance to not only drive significant revenues and get us to energy independence, but it could perform significantly better or worse than what we've anticipated. And we want to make sure the member agencies have clarity on that investment. And on the other side, the CIP budget has an appropriation this year to begin the process of studying reuse opportunities at the joint facilities down at Encina. What we're looking to do is collaborate with the region on water reliability and risks. We can partner in and kind of feed into the work that Dennis and some of his peers have done with the North County Water Recycling Group. We can also strike out on other concepts that make sense for our member agencies. So we'll begin to kind of flesh those concepts out this year. On the conduct sound planning side, on the operations side, the south parcel continues to be a piece of land. It's directly adjacent to the Encino Water Pollution Control Facility. It continues to be an asset that's not particularly productive other than as a hedge against future growth. We've got a pretty good idea of what our future infrastructure facilities are required for that facility, and we have a number of different entities that would like to use that property, both in the short term and long term, that range everything from assistance with a pump station rebuild or the North Coast Corridor project to people who want to build golfing enterprises that are there. So we've got a lot of opportunities there, but we'll let that play out through the member agency managers over the next year or so. And on the other side, on the capital improvement side and sound planning, we're beginning to start the process of having a wastewater treatment master plan. We've never had a planning process that considered our phase 5 facilities from the front end to the back end and looked at the different alternative schemes. This is in the area of modeling for wastewater treatment plants. It's kind of an emerging discipline within the field, and we want to make sure that we're taking advantage of that. On the remain efficient side, we're going to minimize the impacts of SDG&E rate pass-throughs. It's really important to us. One of the things we've done to accomplish that is we joined the Department of Energy's Better Plants program. We made a commitment to reduce our energy consumption 5% every year. We've got some plans to do that for next year, and that'll help us maintain at a minimum those pass-through costs from SDG&E. On the CIP side, our SCADA pilot project is the first piece of our technology master plan implementation. It's going to allow us to test our standards that we set up for our new SCADA system. And if these standards stand up to our testing, we'll be able to implement in the next phase a plant-wide new SCADA system that takes advantages of computer programming capabilities that did not exist in the year 2000 when we implemented our most recent upgrade. On the meaningful transparency side, we're updating our web pages. And we're also coming up with this idea of having a capital improvement program project scorecard. We've just recently completely redone how we report on the progress of our capital improvement projects. And the scorecard will take those projects that are completed, talk about how they compared to their pro forma financial performance, and give a recurring report on how well we're executing the capital improvement program. On the invest appropriately side, which is the last of our business values, we do have a 2020 staffing succession plan commitment out to our board of directors. They kind of sent us back to the table on that last week, but that's okay because we're also working on those plans in consortium with the San Leo Joint Powers Agency and talking about resource sharing with them as an opportunity for us to get access to some additional staff, some opportunities for their staff to develop, and some opportunities for our staff to work on things that they can't working in Encina. So we've got some complementary types of programs, and we're hopeful that we can develop a little bit of professional development concept for our technical employees while we are a little more efficient on the bottom line as well. And finally, we've got about another $1 million that we're going to invest in our information systems development to continue to deploy this technology master plan. I talked about the SCADA standards, but there are other elements of that program that are going forward. This is our first significant investment in information technology since the year 2000. We have a couple other high-profile kind of issues. We've kind of tested some dashboards in our board of directors agendas that kind of give a quick look at things on financials mostly. We're going to come up with an operational performance trending dashboard for next year. We're going to host, and you'll all be invited to a performance and efficiency summit. We're going to talk about the value that we provide to the community so people understand what we do. It's a big gap, and when we look for investment, it's hard to explain what we do when people come to you cold. So we want to try to start taking a little bit more responsibility for people understanding what we do, and we feel like talking about the things that we do well is a good place to start with that. And finally, on the source control side, we're looking to align ordinances among all the member agencies. It's a project that we undertake once every decade or so to make sure that we don't create openings for industrial users to ride through. And then when we get done with that ordinance alignment, we'll sit down with all the member agencies for an enforcement roundtable that'll allow them to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page when it comes to just little things. Like, for instance, one of the interesting things about Vallecitos as a member agency, sometimes we don't get as much cooperation from the city of San Marcos on building permits as that we would maybe get from the city of Carlsbad, who's one of our member agencies. So we want to make sure that we stay in touch with the right people at San Marcos, that we've got the right line of communication through Vallecitos, and that when people who have the ability to potentially impact the joint treatment facilities down in Carlsbad, that we get them permitted and make sure that they're up and running correctly. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I appreciate your time.
Okay, I want to thank you for an excellent report and a very impressive display. Do we have questions or comments for him?
Just a comment.
Yes.
what was quickly done in 7 minutes or less has been vetted by both the Policy Committee and the Capital Committee in the Capital Committee, we spent 2.5 hours on this the other day, and that staffing issue came up, and then at the board, we spent even more time, and that's what Kevin had brought to us relative to the change. So I'm thoroughly comfortable with everything that's been presented, and I'll wait till after if there's more questions.
Did you have a question? Well, I'd like to say I really appreciate the effort of our representatives on the board, because you did come forward recommending this. So I would hope we could have a motion to adopt the resolution.
Move to approve.
Second.
And a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Do we have a number?
This will be resolution 1471. Director Hernandez.
Yes.
Director Martin.
Yes.
Director Pinella.
Yes.
Director Evans.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great job.
Thank you, Kevin. Good job, Mike.
I do have one question. You said when Mike comes back in 5 years. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, I picked up on that too.
Did you guys catch that?
Yeah.
What it means is I just celebrated my 55th birthday. And I'm not sure if I'll make
Wow,
it
you look
60.
35.
But if I do, it's going to be because of great people like Mike Stein.
Yeah, okay.
He's one of the gray ghosts, but for some reason, we've got all the gray and he's not getting it, but I'm suspect on that.
Yeah.
Healthy living.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
both. Okay, moving on to item 2.4, Communication and Outreach Program. This is going to be presented by Chris, and I'm wondering, would you like to be at the beginning, Mike? All right.
All right, thank you so much. So back in October, the Board of Directors selected Katz and Associates to develop an updated outreach program that furthers the board's strategic plan. And Katz completed the customer survey. They did the communications audit of all the district's materials that we have, all the brochures, forms, supplies that we have, documents, and developed that key message platform that I brought back in on April 8th of 2015. They crafted a draft communications plan. It was sent out to you on, I think, May 26th by Diane, and you had a chance to look at it. The plan communicates some communication objectives, some audiences, internal staff such as ourselves, the board themselves, our direct rate payers, individual customers, and then also the indirect rate payers, the ones that are in apartments and condominiums, and then also the community at large, governmental entities, kind of defined all those audience. The key messages were spelled out previously in that previous communication. And then the portions that are still under development that haven't been completed yet are those measures of effectiveness, which I'm really interested to see, and then also a finalized timeline. So once this portion's complete, we'll be able to have a speakers bureau. I provided some edits to Tina, my comments on the communications plan, some things that I thought that she needed to include, including Metropolitan Water District as one of the entities, one of the governmental entities, County Water Authority, the County of San Diego North Economic Development Corp, Innovate 78, some of those other entities that we want to reach out to. There's quite a few little comments I had, but in mentioning Tina, I have a little update. Tina's, somewhere in probably Nebraska, about halfway across at this point. She's relocating to Massachusetts. She's going to be getting her master's degree there. Her fiance's going along with her. And spoke with Tina and spoke with Patsy, and personally, I'd like to see her continue on in the project. She and I work together very well. She's had a full chance to evaluate the district as a whole, and I'd like to keep her on. And I have, managed projects from afar, and sometimes when you're on the phone, it's just on the phone. When you're on email, it's just email. And whether it's, 12 miles away or thousands, it doesn't make too much difference specifically. But she will not be available to come to, board meetings such as this. And I talked to Patsy today, and Patsy was ready to run up here and be part of this board meeting. But I said, well, let me talk to the board and find out what your thoughts are. They can reassign another person to the project, but she's willing to continue, and I personally would like her to continue. And so that's up for discussion with the board.
Okay. Do we have any comments or questions? Oh,
I have one comment. I came after seeing this on the agenda fully expecting to see Katz and Associates here. If they can't complete their assignment, maybe we don't have a valid contract. I've been trying to figure out what it is we're spending $150,000 on, to be honest, personally, myself. I understand they did a survey, but I don't see the other benefits, and I was gonna have questions for them tonight.
Sure.
Especially the lead, who's no longer with the company.
Right.
So it's kind of a surprise to me. Maybe I didn't read something.
Oh, it was in there, but it's just the little note on, she's relocating.
Well, I understand that happens.
Yeah, and that does happen.
But we still have a contract where we've spent X amount of
Absolutely,
dollars to get a
absolutely.
finished
And
product.
Katz is gonna make good on the contract, and just, they can reassign other staff to be on board. She can continue, probably maybe as a consultant to Katz, as a sub-consultant to them. I think I would really like to have that continue. She understands the district really well. She understands our processes. She's the one that did the communications audit of all of our materials. So, and when, once she gets settled on that end, some of the things that'll be bringing forth are those style guides that I'm really looking forward to. I understand, that this is a setback for us, but there's things that I want to get to, is that style guide and, a PowerPoint in a format that's very consistent, so that when we have our water academy, all the staff's PowerPoints have a certain look to them and so forth. So those are some of the deliverables that I'm looking for myself, and it just happened that she's relocating.
Okay, Director Hernandez.
I understand long-distance work, we do it all the time, San Francisco, Florida, all that, telecommunications, the way it is today, the communication and sending documents back and forth is not a big deal. I guess a couple of things. With regard to putting together PowerPoints and that, is she still gonna be involved, or is that staff here that's gonna be doing that with her input from what she knows?
That will really be Tina continuing on as our direct support person. It'll get reviewed through Katz's process. Patsy's basically the lead project manager, or I think she has a better title than that. But Patsy's the high-end individual on the project that reviews all of Tina's work. But it still would be Tina that would be producing the deliverables.
I guess then my question would move to, if Tina is gonna be entering a master's program, doing our work, setting up PowerPoints and setting up presentation materials, it seems that would, in my opinion, would take a second place to her master's work. And that I'm a little bit initially uncomfortable with, having, gone to school and tried to do work at the side. You can't serve two masters, and if she's going to...
No pun intended, right?
Exactly, if she's going to be a master's program, then if the data is there, then somebody close at hand putting together the physical work, because one of the things that I'm just sorely disappointed in is, we've been doing this since October, and in my 4 years, I finally understood water business is slow and getting it done, but goodness gracious, the way this is going, our initial desire to put together a speakers bureau, so we as board members, beginning with Hal and I voicing this, could go out in the community, can speak, is going to be more than a year in the making, and I'm just wondering what the timeline for that is going to be, because I see here, we just have a placeholder.
Right.
If I might go back, one for Director Martin, I think we're about 80,000, 75,000 into this, not that higher number that you spoke about. I'll let Chris talk about the deliverables and who's doing it. That was when we started into this process. That was kind of something I brought up as far as timing, but if we go back to the schedule, we're not very far off what we proposed the schedule would be. I go back and I'm sure behind a little bit. The trick is, I can't do anything in between the 2 weeks or every month that I talk to the board. That's where the delay is.
Well,
I can't send something to the 5 of you and then have you all collaborate with me back. It's got to be done in a public forum. So that's why we're having to give this to you at a board meeting, get feedback. We go do whatever it is, and then I've got to wait 2 weeks, give it to the board, get feedback, and then finally move forward. That's why it took almost 2 months to get through the public survey, because I can't do anything in between. So they've done everything we can do, but that's why it's taken so long to turn it.
Legally, you can't do it. Is that's what you're
Yeah, I can't do it. It's a serial meeting. If I talk to
Oh,
all
yeah,
5
yeah,
of you
yeah.
about the same thing, I've conducted a public meeting. That was
phrase
the
I was looking
drawback to
for.
this
Yeah,
process.
okay, now I understand.
Yeah, that's why it's taking so long.
Well, I guess what I would feel much more comfortable about is understanding how Tina is going to accomplish this with her master's program simultaneously, and we in fact are not going to take a second seat. With what I have been involved with personally, there's go-to meetings where the person can be up on the screen and we can actually have a dialogue directly with that person, see documents sent back and forth. So that portion, the distance thing is minuscule as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
It really is what she wants to do is her master program. How is that going to impact our program?
Right, and I think I'm correct when I believe that starts for her in the fall, which I thought she could get through this over the summer, so.
Oh,
At this rate of 2015 or 18 or 20?
Fall of 2015, she would start.
Yeah, I don't think at this rate she'll be done in a couple months.
I'm sorry,
Sorry.
I couldn't hear you.
I don't think she's gonna be done in a couple months at this rate. I mean, we're not moving very fast here.
Okay, were you finished?
well,
No, come back to you.
maybe that's a discussion, because, we do have 3-4 months from now till fall semester starts.
Right.
What is expected to be completed in that 3 or 4 months? Because if that's the case, I mean, and her full focus is on the things that we want to do.
Right.
Prioritizing that and perhaps even rearranging the priority to get those things accomplished. I guess that's what I'm trying to feel more comfortable with.
Correct, and some of the items, she's got partials on anyway. I know she's already initiated the style guide because I saw some examples that she was putting through. It's not complete yet, it's not ready for the board to look at, but it is something that she's already working on. She's already working on the PowerPoint formatting and so forth. So there's parts and pieces that, yes, there's deliverables and there's dates, but there's work that she's accomplished already on portions of the later down the line deliverables.
Well, then, let me, and I apologize to
No,
keep
no.
continually serially questioning here, but perhaps what needs to be done, because the magic word was presented, serial meetings. As soon as I heard that, now I quite frankly understand it. However, we do have a committee, which I think I'm part of, that potentially could meet more often to get things reviewed so that we don't have to spend, the time. Maybe there could be an additional, so that 2-week period might only be a week, and then we could do something there.
That would be fine. The direction we had when we started was the full board would be.
I understand thoroughly.
If
Now
that's the
I'm-
board's
now-
pleasure, that's fine.
Now I'm trying to whip this horse a little faster.
Sure, no, I get it.
Okay, so that, maybe that's a direction that we can move to.
Yeah.
Thank you for that comment and suggestion, and Director Sinella.
Chris, is she going to remain a Katz and Associates employee, or will she be like a subcontractor to them?
I don't think she'll be specifically a CATS employee any longer.
Okay. So how would that work? She would contract with Cats
Yes.
to continue on with us?
Correct.
Okay. That further adds to my discomfort. I have the same discomforts that Director Hernandez had mentioned with regards to her priorities. That it's a big move, 3,000 miles across the country. There's relocation considerations, and then family considerations, and then you tack on she's a few months away from going into a master's program. Not having that direct tie to Cats or really Vallecitos, I have some concerns that we may not be her top priority. Don't know. She seems like takes her job very seriously, but there's some concerns there. And then to also further echo what the sentiments of Director Martin and Director Hernandez, I too am very disappointed with this process so far. I know that Chris, you came kind of to this party, for lack of a better way to put it, kind of midstream, and so I get that. I'm certainly not pointing any blame on you or anybody else in staff, but we started this in October, and really, truthfully, we started this probably last summer, and it took quite a while just to get them on board. And I think they came to us initially with a team of 4 or 5 folks, and so I'm sure, I would hope so, that they've been working this project as a team, that should we decide to have another member of that team serve as our lead, that there's some succession planning that's been going on.
Yes, and Patsy's aware of that, and that is an alternative that they're willing to offer, absolutely.
Okay. And then the only other thing, if you could pass on from just one board member's perspective, if they could maybe turn it up a notch and pick it up. I'd like to start seeing some of the, even if it's just a progress report on where they are with some of these deliverables. I can just tell you again, from my perspective, I just feel like it's really dragging out too long. And I'm almost at the point, again, just one board member, where I don't even need them, because when we first started this process, I was a brand new board member. And I was really excited that we were gonna have them come and give us all these tools to go out in the public and talk. Well, very rarely does a week go by now that I'm not in the public talking already, so I don't need them anymore, because I've kind of self-educated myself. If this drags on, if we're having the same conversation this summer, I'm going to be making a motion that we pull the plug altogether. And this is really strike 2 for them with me, because the first time we hired them for another project, when they came in and they met with us for real quickly as we were kind of getting this ball rolling, I thought nothing came out of that either, and still to this day don't think anything came out of that. So in my mind, it is a strike 2.
Okay.
Yes,
I was yeah. Well, I think the consensus, did you have another one?
Yeah,
Dr. Martin?
real quick. Where's Patsy tonight?
She is probably home tonight. She said she would come up here. I just wasn't sure. That was my call of saying, I don't think I need you to show up tonight. I wanted to hear what the board had to say and go. And I really want to be able to go back and say, we'll have Tina remain on, or as our lead, we'll have Tina be there as a partial, or give us a new project manager.
And if I may, just to continue on that, I was on the board with Jim Hernandez and Betty when we decided to take this route. And it was really a route that was suggested to make the entire board happy, with the fact that some board members were going to go out and talk to people, and some board members really didn't like that idea. The board's changed since then, but they didn't like the idea of us going out there on our own and wild billing it. So it was like, well, suppose we form a speakers group and do it that way and do it a little nicer. And so this has been a long, ongoing process. Now, as far as this company's concerned, we picked them. I think they were an excellent choice. She had an unfortunate accident, and now she's unfortunately moved and changed her life, which at that age we've all done probably, which is not unexpected. But I don't really think we've gotten anything from Katz and Associates that's firm, it's a deliverable, other than they hired a company to go out and do a survey. So I'm so disappointed in this company right now and what it hasn't done for us, that I would potentially try to find out. I would, as one person on the board, like to see how much have we paid them, how much do we not have to pay them, how do we get out of this? Because it's dragging on forever. And personally, someone who's 3,000 miles away, I don't really want to do business with them. That's me, I'm old school. I like seeing people, talking to people. I'm not a TV and Skype person. Hard to believe, I know, but I'm not. But I'm just saying, I just think that the whole deal has failed, personally.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
I was going to say, I know you're waiting, Director Hernandez. I would like to say, I think we have consensus amongst us that it's taken way too long, that we're not comfortable with Tina trying to attempt this at a distance. I value your input, that she's been very useful to you, and she's done good things, but I tend to want to agree. I think we have consensus that concerns us. I think the good thing that can come out of this is and Director Snell, you did point to this. You said, you know, I've gone out kind of self-educated myself in how to speak to the public. And part of our hope was, when we did this, was that we would all have a unified message. It wasn't to teach us necessarily how to speak, but that we would be unified and have consistent messaging, and in the process contact. So I think we've learned some from the poll that was done in the surveys, but I think at this point, we do need to do something differently. Director Hernandez.
And this would mean, because as I was thinking, if you recall, although I wasn't reimbursed for it, and I did get a little bit of shot about it, the PowerPoint that I put together personally was done from the East Coast. That was my niece, who I just directed what to do, gave her some storyboard, and she did it, and we back and forth 2 or 3 times, Skyping, which was new to me, which I found it wasn't like go to meeting, but it was the same thing, and it worked. So there, I believe, still could be a place for Tina, but not as the project manager. And again, part of the legal problem that we're encountering because of serial meetings and only getting a piece of this and waiting 2 more weeks to do it, I think could be potentially resolved by implementing the committee meeting, where in fact we could, and reprioritizing what I thought was the purpose from the beginning, which was the speaker bureau and presentation materials, so that as a board member, I could go and not use the one I created, although I'm still going to mention a couple of things, to do that.
Director,
Okay.
General Manager.
No, I'm not director. I've been called worse things. Okay, what I think I'll have Chris do, once what Director Martin said, we'll pull together just a status report of where we stand, where the schedule is, and what's yet to be completed, and let you know. We'll let them know that we do need to get it going, and I think what we'll find is the bulk of it's in process. The bulk of the work is in process. I believe the bulk of it's in process. So let us get you an update. Within your new process, I know it's frustrating to the board, but again, when we went into this, we knew it was going to take a long time. Director Snell, I know it's drug out, but again, like I've said, if we could do things on imagine we give it to you, we get feedback, I can't do anything for 2 weeks. There's a reason it's drug out. It's not because of lack of anybody's desire. I know the board wants to get it done. I know Katz wants to get it done. I think you will come out of it with a very good product that you will find very usable. So why don't you let us get an update? We'll let Katz know that the feeling of the board is not too happy with Tina being the primary role of taking it. Let's keep it local. And we'll get a list of everything that we've done, where they stand and everything, just give you a status update.
I'd also like to ask the board do we need to think about if we would like to hand this over to the committee, the communication committee, to speed up the process? Could you analyze if that's what we need to do and present that for us as well?
I think that's just a preference of the board. Again, we got to go back 6 months or 5 months or 4 months, whatever it was, when we get to the process. And I can't remember when we actually even hired Katz. But again, it took
October.
Okay.
16th.
To get to where we got through it, but again, to get through the process, you know, we can put a calendar together when and what, and I think you'll see that we're not far off from what we thought. As far as if the board wants the committee, that's just up to the board's discretion. What that will do is I can call a committee meeting on 24 hours notice. So if we have something and we're ready to talk about it, I can call a committee meeting.
Okay,
It doesn't take board direction to call for a committee meeting.
Director Sinella.
A couple things, and just, this is the most immediate thing. I don't have any strong feelings either way if we do the committee or not. I think it's worked really well with the finance committee, so, but I don't think that's really the problem here. We've had this contract with them now for 7 months. That means we've had, at a minimum, 14 board meetings, but because we've been having some heavy agendas lately, we probably have closer to 20, 22 board meetings since then, and we can easily find that information out. I think Tina's presented to us one time, and I haven't seen the other folks from CATS, I don't think, in the 7 months that we've been on board. I think the polling firm was here once or twice. So we've had ample meetings, again, north of 20, since we've been in contract. So I think they've had plenty of opportunity to come and present to us and give us updates and kind of give us a progress report where they're at. And then secondly, just to clarify kind of a misunderstanding earlier, Madam Chair, what I meant by self-educating was not on my speaking skills or speaking abilities. It was more on the water industry as a whole. As we go to these conferences, as I tour our district facilities, and Ed gives me tours and kind of brings me up to speed of what's going on, I pass that information on to our public. And as our general manager can be witness to, I quite frequently will text him in the middle of the week and just say, hey, I'm about ready to say this, is it correct? Is that not right? And so I do verify the information with him, just to make sure my I's are dotted and T's are crossed. But it's certainly, I think now that we're a more seasoned board, because up until when we started this process, most of us were brand new, with the exception of the gentleman to my right. As we've get more and more experience, I've become more and more comfortable spreading the good word of all the good things that we're doing as a district. So I think the need for this is not as important as it used to be, but I also know that we're not going to be here forever, and there's going to be another round of new board members, so this might be a good tool to have in our toolbox to be able to use.
I was really trying to refer to that, thank you. I didn't mean to say otherwise. I think it's important that we come up with a unified message and that each of us goes out, and as you do, I know you do a lot of speaking.
Well, and I think a good
That can carry
takeaway
forward into the future.
for me
But-
was the board really would like to have those, like a PowerPoint, for speaking engagements. And I don't think I had caught that, through just, entering this partway through. I thought it was more this communications plan and metrics of measuring success. And it's good for me to hear this.
Director Martin.
And if I may say, I think, yeah, we wanted to have some commonality, but each director that's here now, that's been here in the past, that will be here in the future, are their own people. And there's going to be certain things that they want to stress. So it was a format that we could stick to, move off of, delve into something we have more interest in, like desal versus groundwater, or groundwater versus, something that allowed us the fluidity to do that. I will just say that this process has been very slow with Katz and Associates, and although I did vote for them, I've been very disappointed with them. And although I believe it was your call she not be here, I think that was a really bad decision on her part, because she's the owner, and if there's bad news, that's who we should be hearing it from, not from our staff that has to translate it. That's just my thought process. So I'm disappointed with her with the first report she gave us at the university. I think it was lackluster and wasn't worth, I think it was $10,000, I'm not sure. And this contract, the full contract is for how much? 85,000?
87,000?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just saying, when you have a bad horse, you don't keep riding it till it dies. You kind of change horses at some point in time. And I don't know if it's time to do that, but I'd like not consider it because we really haven't gotten anything from Katz and Associates, in my opinion. But thank you, Chris. Thank you for all you do.
So we'll get back to the board.
One last, and I'll keep this quick, because I don't want you to walk away tonight thinking that all we want is a PowerPoint. You're right on, you're dead on. We do want the metrics, we do want the whole marketing and branding plan, not just a PowerPoint.
Right.
That just was kind of how this conversation initially got started a year, 14, 16 months ago.
That's good information for me, too.
Okay, we'll reach out to them and pass it on. Thank you.
Thank you. And did you care to speak? Michael?
Yes.
Hunsaker.
Mike Hunsinger, San Marcos. I don't think I introduced myself properly the first time, for the record. I find myself doing much the same thing you're trying to do in the city of San Diego right now, setting up a series of talks, forums, workshops, and such. I'm a little concerned about how this is being approached. Number one, each of you represents a specific division. You should be representing your division and the ratepayers. Getting a unified, common voice doesn't exactly inspire confidence that you're representing your division rather than some agenda. Second thing I'm worried about is the calling of special meetings on short notice. This is becoming a common way through many government agencies to work around the 3-day Brown Act requirement. Special meetings are supposed to be for special emergencies type of situations. And I've got this opinion from the ACLU, as a matter of fact. And and if you do have a special meetings and the committee meetings, they should be posted somewhere right up prominently in the website. One of the complaints I'm getting about most outreach programs is that they are becoming too much politically correct, feel-good watchwords that come flying out every which way, and they're sometimes not particularly useful. Now, one of the things that is coming up is the likelihood of further restrictions on irrigation. That could be what, July 1st, potentially? Having some outreach on things that are coming up beforehand would be useful. There's been a big push about turf replacement subsidies. Well, this generates a lot of interest, but most of it apparently has already been called for, even though there was almost a 10-fold expansion of the program. And there's a lot of people who may go out and buy turf replacement and suddenly find that there's no subsidies left over. Well, I think this is a sort of useful information. It may not be all positive and feel good, but it would make the ratepayers have a greater sense of confidence in their representatives and that they're getting the straight story and they're being able to get information they can use in the future. Just informing them, well, we use 1,400 acre-feet a year of water or something like that. Well, that's a nice figure, but what does it mean for my irrigation of my landscape? What does it mean to our parks? What does it mean as how I should plant? I'd like to see a series of discussions, videos on how to do low water landscaping. And I'd like to see some more definite information other than what you get from Home Depot. Because all too often you can't really judge, you don't have any real good ideas of how to design something to look good. You don't have any ideas of costs. You don't have any idea that this little plant that you bought at Home Depot is going to be a monster when it grows up. These are the sorts of things that I think would be useful. Now, I'm going to probably be starting about 2 different websites concerning water, mostly the Vallecitos Water District, over probably the next 2 months. And there's some things that are very useful that you don't have yet. I think, for example, the board packets should be posted. If you're going to have transparency, the details in these things, because all too often in our California government, the devil is indeed in the details. So these should be out there. Now, this is something that from now on, I'll be downloading all the board packets, but I will be asking for the previous ones, and I'll start posting them as well. These are things that are can be useful. And I'll have links to whatever you have in your website that I think that people should be aware of. I agree with all of the complaints you've had so far, with what you've had. And we should do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heinsacker. Okay, I think we've well, we can move forward. Item 2.5, resolution placing in nomination Hal Martin as a member of the Offshore Region 10 Board of Directors.
This one, I think, speaks for itself. Last week, 2 weeks ago, the board nominated Rick Martin, so we have a resolution that we need to turn in on behalf, so we just ask that you approve the attached resolution.
Move to approve.
Been moved and seconded.
Unless Hal doesn't want it anymore.
You didn't want to hear my stump speech? Nothing?
Did you make the PowerPoint?
Good news, guys.
Yeah, I'm working on it. I'll have it someday.
Maybe when you're done with
Yeah,
the term.
exactly.
All right.
Before
So,
I'm president, it's
I believe this is a resolution that's been moved and seconded. It's resolution,
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
both for myself.
yes.
Thank you, board, very much.
Okay.
For the opportunity to serve.
End of action items. So we're going to reports. General Manager.
We're in the middle of the drought.
Was that this year?
Yeah, we'll work that. Actually, I'll confine my report to a closed session for a discussion item.
Okay, thank you. And Michael?
And I will also confine it to closed session, but I do think I'd invite your attention to a couple articles in this morning's Union Tribune. There's a good one on the drought and how the various cities and districts are doing on their cutbacks. And I'm happy to say that if you go through there, Vallecitos is doing pretty good. I mean, I think out of about 18 districts, there were only a couple that had cut back more, and so you're really on the way. The other thing, I think I would invite your attention to Logan Jenkins' article, and it's pretty good. It's about the drought. It's a good one to read today if you haven't already. And also just for Mr. Hunsaker's sake, the Metropolitan poured $350 million into the turf removal program last week, and they eliminated the one-time restrictions. So there's some money available there for folks. So they're heading in that direction. And that's all I have.
Well, that's a perfect lead-in for the San Diego County Water Authority report, because one of the things in discussion, especially with the 4 delegates that were up there, is that the $350,000 million that they're putting into it, they actually pulled out of money that was set aside for water transfers if they run out of water. And so they knew that transfers would probably be necessary. They know they will be more expensive than expected, but they took the money anyway and gave it to turf replacement. They also have discovered that turf replacement is the least effective conservation measure, the least verifiable that it really saves water over the long term. And if people put in the turf but they do not go through a change of their irrigation system, you haven't saved any water.
Well,
because you've really done nothing. The change also that's occurring with the 350 is, as Mr. Hunsaker said, a lot of it's already claimed. They've had it's such a backlog. But what they've done is they've also reduced the amount to $25,000 per at the max. They are no longer asking for receipts to prove it unless you want it's higher, like $100,000 worth of stuff. They've made it very simple. They've removed a lot of the commercial people, the ability to use it. So although it sounds very impressive, I'm not convinced, and I know the delegates didn't really vote for it because they felt like it's kind of a loose cannon. So it's exciting and that turf replacement, but it's not the most effective way to conserve water. And they also don't even know how long it will truly last, what it will do in the future. You know, it's like anything, it's not known. So that was part of it on it. There was also an interesting discussion on, let me find it, I want to get to the right page. We did a, is Chris no longer here? Oh, he's not. I was going to say they did, one of the things under communication was that they did the centerpieces. And instead of doing like succulents and that, this time they chose to use water-efficient devices for their centerpiece.
Give you a
So-
toilet?
Yeah, there was a toilet. Oh, they were just showing they had the little shower timers. It was a bit, and that had gotten a really good response. We were trying to do something different, not just to always be the succulents. Toilets, now that was a good idea. They did have that. Also, we have our rate change public hearing going on June 25th at 9 a.m. And as you probably are very much aware, they are raising rates 5.4 on treated and 6.4, is that correct, Dennis?
Give or take.
6.6 on untreated. And of course, that will be passed on to our ratepayers directly. They had an interesting discussion about the San Vicente pump storage. You know, the dam has the highest raise, I believe, in the Western Hemisphere, dam raise of 715 feet, but we're looking into using it. The city of San Diego wants to tie it in with their pure water program and would like to, and in conjunction with the water authority, and they're looking at using it for energy production. And it was a very interesting discussion between those who feel like water authority has no business getting into the energy, and the other people saying it's a wonderful way to, and a great way to make money and to directly help the ratepayers. So that was a very interesting discussion on that. And there was also one more. Put them down. Oh, this was interesting. There was a very brief presentation by Sandag on the upcoming regional plan and the program San Diego Forward. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but there were 5 or 6 main points, and you can find San Diego Forward on a website if you want to look it up. But one was in how it tied in. Mostly it's transportation, of course, but how it tied in was they had, of course, everybody's going to use the same forecast, so we'll all be in sync. But it said most growth will be infill and along the transportation corridors, and that 18% of it will be multifamily. So that's significant, and that's the new trend. And they had a chart that shows you how it used to kind of meander. Well, the multifamily is really going up. Third, they expect 13 million new residences by 2050. So we'll have 50 million people in San Diego County by 2050. That blows my mind. San Diego is the second most populous county and anticipated in growth. And their forecasts have actually come out at 0.5% of accuracy per year over an average. So that's amazing. I would not have thought it was that close. They anticipate that over half of the new growth by 2050 will be in San Diego City, but the most housing between now and 2020 is actually the city of San Marcos.
Mm-hmm.
And we are fourth after it's San Diego, and then a little Chula Vista, the county, and San Marcos. So in the next, talking 5-10 years, we're going to be hit with a lot of growth. And then it will sort of spread out over time, and by 2050, we're not in that same position. But I thought it was very interesting that we're pointing that out. And there was a conversation about how we forecast where the growth will be. We push the growth to certain places. So what about the people who have the land that want to do something, but you're not near a transportation corridor? At the end of the time, they do anticipate that eventually 51% of the county will be under preservation and 49% will be developed. Well, those were just interesting figures to have thrown at you, and of course, he wanted to get into all his great techniques for transportation, but the Water Authority really didn't want to hear them. And finally, this is just a silly little thing, but they had a report on the right-of-way and tree management. And I just thought, I don't know how much right-of-way we deal with, but San Diego County Water Authority deals with 168 miles of dedicated right-of-way. 98% of it is an easement, and they have to patrol it weekly. Now, I don't know, is that what we do? they do Patrol Weekly. He said they do 5,000 to 6,000 dig alerts annually. And they have 45 to 55 permits or agreements to deal with annually on how the easements are being used. And they have 45 to 50 violations notices annually. So who would have thought the right-of-way could be so consumptive of our time, money, and energy? It was very, very interesting. And I think that's it. So thank you for letting me indulge. Next, the Encino Wastewater Authority.
We haven't had a meeting yet.
Oh,
Move
cool.
on.
Well, I do want to
Good
compliment you
report.
guys on all that work on the budget. Directors' reports on travel, conferences, and seminars. Yes,
Just a real quick update on the upcoming water summit through the San Diego North EDC. Logan Jenkins is going to agreed to be our moderator, so I'm glad that he's taking a role in the media writing about water now. And I think Director Martin, you had said at the last meeting or the meeting before that we should reach out to Hunter Industries, and we did, and they are going to participate as one of our panel speakers, and I believe they're going to be a sponsor as well. So thanks for the
Very
suggestion.
nice, great. Nice.
Um,
What date, do you have a firm date?
Yeah, July 16th at the Vista the Civic Center.
Civic Center, yeah.
And actually, speaking of marketing materials, those are being finalized now, so I'll be able to pass something out. or
Is that a
email.
lunch?
It's going to be a breakfast, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m.
It's the same as our
the employee
recognition,
lunch.
isn't it?
No, we don't start at 12 here.
Yeah.
Oh, no, but same day.
Same day, yes.
Okay,
Same
I'm
day.
saying I already had VW down here, I'm going. what
Same
am I
day for the
missing?
employee
One to
recognition.
the other, okay.
If I might, with the chair's indulgence, because
Yes.
Mike is, Director Snell is our rep from the board there, do you want me to just add a item on here for report instead of?
Yeah, I mean, right now, there's more to report because I wanted to keep the board apprised on the water summit specifically. Once that's.
That's what I'm wondering, do you?
Once that's passed, I mean, I'll still give updates just like I do for any
Okay,
other meetings I go
okay.
to.
Okay, thank you.
That's the only thing I've done.
None other? Okay. Council Water Utilities is coming up next week. Please let Diane know. Is it next week? The
Yeah.
15th.
Chair?
The
16th.
Yes, sir.
When's our next board meeting?
17th?
17th.
And I have a question. On
Yes.
the 18th, water reuse from 2 to 4? It's
Yeah.
on my calendar, I have no
I
idea.
do too, the North County
um,
Reuse Group.
I think what we had on that, we just had the meeting Monday, Monday, I didn't make it. They were gonna do the public meeting for all the board members and any other members of the
Right.
public to come talk.
Right.
That is now going to be done in conjunction with what Director Snell is doing.
At the
instead.
Water Summit?
At the Water Summit. I think Mike Thornton. Mike Thornton
they're
will be
one of the
doing it on
panelists as
behalf,
well.
so we figured why have two meetings, we have that Water Summit, we'll just roll it over into that.
Okay, so that's over.
Yeah.
And did we have another meeting scheduled to do budget? I think we added one at the last meeting.
We said we would keep the 15th open, and we're actually meeting tomorrow and Monday to see where we stand on the budget, and I'll let you guys know.
So keep it open until we hear further?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
I
Any
know-
more?
I know we were supposed to keep the 15th open, but that might be difficult for me. So,
Okay. Like I said, we'll have a
That's what
better
we're just
idea.
talking
We're meeting
about.
tomorrow, and then on Monday again to get through it, the changes that we're proposing.
Okay. Director's comments, agenda items? And would you put this into closed session then?
You just have like, get a motion?
Motions?
Oh, I need a motion. I motion and
So
I
moved.
second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go into closed session. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Those